Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we've got a special comment on the response to Free Kesha. I had hoped that I would never have to make another special comment talking about this, because in 2013, I made one surrounding the mismanagement of pop star Kesha's career, culminating in the cancellation of the collaboration project that she made with the Flaming Lips, Lipsha. Instead of special comment, I outlined all the reasons why this was an asinine decision that ultimately cost them and their label a considerable profit and the opportunity to market a more versatile and bankable star instead of just doubling down on club boom trends that were nearing their final moments. Granted, the entire Warrior rollout and promotion had been a catastrophe where the labels had repeatedly shot themselves in the foot to the point where you could argue it might have been intentional sabotage. Well, turns out that might as well be true, because in the following months, Kesha sued longtime collaborating producer Dr. Luke for some pretty horrific charges, including sexual assault and battery, sexual harassment, and violation of California business practices that trace back over a decade, including emotional and verbal abuse that partially triggered her eating disorder for when she went to rehab in early 2014. Now, the legal nightmare of this case will only develop further as the lawsuits see court, but to try to make sense out of all the suits and all the countersuits, Kesha was looking to try to get at least a release from her exclusive contract with Dr. Luke and his label Kemosabe, for which she's required to release several more albums before the contract terminates. So, in 2015, Kesha added an additional suit to the parent label Sony Music, seeking a preliminary injunction that would allow her to work while the court system hammers this mess out, especially as her brand's value suffers with more time out of the spotlight. Now, if you were a Sony record executive right now, you're in a terrible position. On the one hand, you've got a very bankable star making some very serious allegations who's been trying on multiple occasions to get away from her main producer even before she signed to you, and on the other hand, you've got a producer who's brought in disgusting amounts of money to your company, but over the past few years has been responsible for fewer and fewer hits, with 2015 only netting him a single top 10 song with other Kemosabe signee, Rock City. It doesn't help matters that Kesha's legal representation has been subpar at best, specifically with regards to the injunction itself. Reportedly, Sony executives offered Kesha the opportunity to work with other producers, but her lawyer said these promises were illusionary and made in bad faith, because Sony would not promote an album if it was not supported or produced by Dr. Luke, a business relationship that they probably value more. Now, as I outlined in my previous special comment, this is probably true. Kesha's promotion and marketing by Sony has been lousy, and the fact that Kesha's lawyer could not expand upon this further is kind of alarming, because it appears speculative the way it's positioned. Sadly, it's also probably the reason why the New York Supreme Court judge ruled against Kesha's injunction last Friday, which means that Kesha either has to record several albums under Dr. Luke, or she has to wait until the lawsuits are over. And you can bet he's gonna drag this out, if only because of sheer spite at this point, which will probably do irreparable damage to her career, to say nothing else. Also keep in mind that Dr. Luke has a history of dragging things out. From the time that Kesha first signed in 2005, it wouldn't be until late 2008 where she would record backing vocals for Right Round for Flow Rider, which got her big start. In between then, though, she and Dr. Luke reportedly barely spoke, and Kesha's previous management, DAS, who reportedly had been told by Kesha about the assault mentioned in the lawsuits, were trying to get her out of that contract, which they described as worse than the one between Lou Pearlman and the Backstreet Boys. Now, on the topic of DAS, because I know somebody's gonna bring this up in the comments, when Kesha went to court in 2011 on contract terms defending Dr. Luke in order to fight management contract disputes here, she reportedly made the statements under oath that he never drugged or initiated sexual contact with her, or at least that she didn't remember. And to some, that's a giant red flag that Kesha could indeed be pushing that something isn't quite true here, except the more you think about that, the less sense that makes. For one, Kesha is not a stupid woman, so putting herself through the living hell of a tabloid legal sex case is something that one does not engage in lightly, especially if this is a contract dispute that could easily be raised and resolved without such allegations. Furthermore, when your opponent has a reported net worth of $100 million and was threatened to destroy you and your entire family if you rat him out, there's justifiable cause that this testimony in 2011 could have been coerced, especially considering that Dr. Luke could easily bribe or blackmail anyone from ever working with Kesha in the mainstream music industry ever again. He has that power. That's the point though, because there is no winners here. If I was Kesha, I would have fired her lawyer months ago for trying to pull up such painfully flimsy arguments that he can't convince a judge of a record label's corruption. I mean, seriously? And I expect that him getting fired, that's just a matter of time. The infuriating thing is that it's not like he doesn't have a point. Record labels shelve or refuse to promote releases all the time, and considering this was already done with Kesha's collaboration with the Flaming Lips, there's ample evidence that Sony might do it again, even if it was a commercial forward-leaning project and have a desire to keep a working relationship with Dr. Luke. Of course, if I was a Sony media executive, seeing the social media firestorm and the mountain of bad press associated with the story, which could have very well turned to a tabloid nightmare when the lawsuits actually hit the court and one that will last for years, I'd be trying to figure out the best way to keep my hands clean of assets that are rapidly proving to be toxic. And even assuming the worst, that Sony would hold Kesha's career hostage to work for Dr. Luke and not just drop her from the label because making no music is preferable to her making music for somebody else, at the end of the day, perpetuating the status quo or dragging this out makes everything worse, especially considering the expanding line of artists and celebrities refusing to work with Dr. Luke or associate with him. From a purely business perspective, he's rapidly becoming just as toxic of an asset, because even if he's found to be innocent, he's not going to come out of this unscathed in terms of his relationships. You know what, in fact, let's take a look at Kemosabe, Dr. Luke's boutique record label. What success stories besides Kesha do we have here? Well, there's Becky G, who had a big hit with Shower in 2014, and no debut album. We have Juicy J of 3 6 Mafia, who dropped a record in 2013 that sold alright, with one hit in Bands That Make Her Dance with Nicki Minaj, and nothing since then. We have Lunch Money Lewis, who dropped the excellent Bills EP last year, and we haven't heard jack from him since, even despite some real buzz and critical acclaim behind him. We got Lil Bibby, who seems to be content to drop mixtapes instead of releasing an album, but a debut is planned for March. Same for Swedish pop star Elephant, who has a debut set for March that was pushed back from September of last year. And finally, we've got Rock City, who dropped their debut album last year, and yet even despite a top 10 single, Locked Away, featuring Adam Levine, the album sold miserably. If I was a Sony record executive, I'd be looking at the track record of Kemosabe and its main producer and questioning just how viable it really is, even despite hiring some promising executives. Digging through the financials are even bleaker. Kemosabe has not cut a profit, and Sony's not going to let Dr. Luke blow millions on promotion for acts that he cannot return their investment. Now, this is where things get interesting, because Sony gave Dr. Luke 5 years from November 2011 to get this label up and running. With bad press and no positive financials piling up, it would just make more sense to either absorb the label back under Sony and its artists, or cut their losses and drop everybody, with the former option probably becoming more likely. Unfortunately, I don't think this helps Kesha all that much, because when Dr. Luke originally signed her, the stipulations in her contract likely keep her bound in an exclusive situation regardless of her label. And if Sony can't or won't put pressure on Dr. Luke to step away, even the dissolution of Kemosabe won't help her all that much. And that's assuming Sony doesn't let Dr. Luke keep his unprofitable little fiefdom here. If he really does have that good of a real business relationship that he's allowed to keep a label that hasn't turned a profit, well, frankly, that's a conversation for Sony Music shareholders to have, especially when Sony has other labels that can turn a profit. You have to wonder who Dr. Luke is blowing here. And regardless of that, if Kesha's getting bad legal advice and doesn't feel that she can trust Sony, there's little that they can do here for at least the next several months until they can make a move. So in this case, I have 3 distinct messages to articulate. One for Sony, one to Dr. Luke, and one for Kesha herself. Let's deal with Sony Music executives first, because arguably you have the most control and power. You can do the most here. Keep in mind, you guys reportedly spent about $60 million in promotion turning Kesha into a star in the first place, and the longer this drags on, you're only gonna lose money. If you're seriously questioning the viability of both Dr. Luke and Kesha tied to your organization, and you should be, you should think that association with the brand will hurt you further, dump them. Both of them. Yeah, not an easy thing to do when you poured so much money into this. Sometimes, though, you just gotta cut your losses. Of course, if you're not willing to do that, I'd lean on Dr. Luke hard to either give Kesha space to make her music. If she's so convinced that she can make hits without him, have her prove it, or produce financial statements to explain why Kemosabe is still not turning a profit even with real talent there. I'd be seriously questioning Dr. Luke's value, especially as his number of hits has dropped into the single digits over the past 2 years. Of course, though, if Kesha or a legal representation isn't willing to negotiate, it's really the only thing you can do to salvage any sort of profit here. Of course, there are a couple other options though. If you still have Lipsha in some form, maybe unmastered, you can give Kesha permission to release it. Don't have it count towards her contract with Dr. Luke, I'm fairly certain it wouldn't. Throw the most cursory promotion behind it, you don't have to try here, and ensure that it's released for sale, not for free. After all, what do you have to lose here? Kesha's brand is losing money with every month, every day that there's no music. So give the diehard fans who won't shut the hell up the album that might as well be the parallel with Miley Cyrus and her Dead Pets. If the album sells, and it'll do okay at best, as if it's as uncommercial as I would expect. You satiated the fans blasting you, and you bought yourself a favorable media cycle. You made a profit essentially off of effort paid for years ago, and more importantly, you bought yourself a measure of good faith with Kesha that might get her to trust your organization. Sure, Dr. Luke will be pissed, but right now you're in damage control, and if he wants any hope of getting any more money or work out of Kesha, this is about the only way he has a hope in hell of getting it. Now, if it doesn't sell or is critically panned, the flam blowback, it's gonna be on her and Wayne Coyne, not on you. You're just releasing it. You didn't actually make it. Or think a little deeper. What about those songs that Kesha wrote when she was in rehab? Have her record them independently of Dr. Luke, then pull him in for mastering or final touch-ups so contractual obligations are met. Hell, this might become necessary later anyways, depending on his contract with her if you want to keep him and her on board, and then release it, just like you release Lipsha. At this point, if you don't have the ability to break her contract with Dr. Luke and want to just kill the press quickly, burning off her contract is easier than limbo or legal hell, especially if it becomes all the more public. So now we come to Dr. Luke. And you know what? I'm going to give you the biggest benefit, the legal benefit of the doubt here. As by law, you are innocent until proven guilty. I'm going to make the assumption that everything you've said is true and that you're the wrong party, that Kesha's agents and her lawyer and her mother have turned her against you wrongly. If that was the case, I'd be pissed too. I'd want to run her career into the ground so that it would never recover. I would almost believe you made those threats to destroy Kesha and her family if she ever told anyone that her lawyer is alleging. You'd probably be that angry. But at this point, I think you got bigger problems, man. I mean, you might have a net worth of around $100 million and you can afford to treat Kesha like dirt and run these lawsuits on your own dime pretty much for spite, but why waste your time? Even if you don't care announce that your label's bleeding money and Sony's probably pissed that you let Kesha get this far into her campaign and drag this into the spotlight for so long because the media cycles aren't dying yet. Is it really worth the hassle? Was the Twitter episode where you sprayed every defense of you even though your lawyers advised of it, which is very much out of character as you're one of the most private people in Hollywood, was that worth it, dragging yourself even deeper into this mess? Let Kesha fend for herself. If she's so convinced she can do it on her own, it's not like you need her anymore to get to the top, you're already there. But dragging this out hurts something that actually matters for music executives like you, and that is relationships. There's already a slew of pop stars like Katy Perry and Lady Gaga who will not work with you anymore, and the best way to rehabilitate your reputation is getting far away from this as quickly as possible and then staying quiet for a good decade, giving you the benefit of the doubt, which by all accounts and everything I've read, you don't deserve. The only thing that you gain by keeping Kesha tied to you is the possibility of a profit that will come with far more headaches than it's worth, especially considering you've been in the industry long enough to know that you can make anyone a star if you put enough money behind them. Unless, of course, you get off on this. And in that case, well, enjoy a few very uncomfortable shareholder meetings as Sony takes your boutique label away and hits you like a ton of bricks for wasting tens of millions of dollars of their money. And frankly, that's the best thing that could happen. And finally, Kesha. Now, you probably don't remember me when I met you back in 2013. Because before your concert in Toronto, I gave you a copy of one of my anthologies. Doubt if you ever read it. Watching all this play out has been heartbreaking for me because nobody deserves the living hell that you've been through in order to pursue your dreams. The courage that it took for you to go public about this and face them all in court is undeniable. And yet with the decision on Friday, it might seem like there's no other options for you here, that there is no way out. Thankfully, believe it or not, you do have options. There is hope here. The first should be a given. Fire your legal representation. Mark Gagaros might be one of the biggest faces in entertainment law. This is the guy that got Chris Brown off on probation after all, but his own star is faded, and you have to wonder how much of it is playing this for his own publicity, especially given that he should have been able to win this injunction, and dragging this out only benefits him and his legal fees. Beyond that, the one thing going in your favor is that time is on your side more than it's not. Yes, your brand is hurting, and these guys have enough money to make this last for decades, and they probably will, but Dr. Luke still hasn't made Kemosabe profitable. And if the releases this year don't pull in anything solid, Sony will hit him hard, and that runs in your favor. Hell, they probably already have hit him hard, given the nightmare of bad publicity that this will continue to become. Now, all that being said, if Sony comes and offers to let you work with another producer, you need to agree here. I'm sorry. The more unreasonable you seem, the worse this looks for you, especially considering that most of the public is disinclined to take you seriously, given the music from you that they know. Yeah, I know that's unfair, and it's wrong, and it doesn't alleviate the Dr. Luke situation because that's only going to get worse. But at this point, it's playing ball in a different field and it'll let you get music released. And yeah, I know they're not going to bother to promote you, but you know what? We live in the era of the internet, and you have one of the most die-hard fan bases that I have ever seen. I'm confident that if the quality is there, like you've promised, you're going to do well. the album will sell well, and that works to your favor as well. Of course, if we assume the worst and Sony committed perjury and they never made the producer offer, for which they'll never get called to account, let's get real here, you still do have options, believe it or not. You have friends in the industry and you've worked as a songwriter before behind the scenes. Keep those relationships alive. You worked with Britney Spears and Lady Gaga and Julian Casablancas and Iggy Pop. Keep those relationships alive and your name attached to prominent credits if you have to work behind the scenes. Reach out to all those artists who supported you and offered to contribute songs, or maybe even guest appearances to their next album. Pull a Ludacris and run up those featuring credits. Help, you know Ludacris from Rising Star. Get the networking advice and any connections you can. You know Josh Groban from there too. You also know Brad Paisley from that show. He's currently more creatively frustrated than he's ever been in his entire career. He could use the help from you, and you've always been comfortable in Nashville. What about those other artists on Kemosabe? Reach out to Lunch Money Lewis or Becky G, the other Kemosabe artists who are locked in contracts and stalled out and frustrated. See if you can help or collaborate. Lord knows Lunch Money Lewis would like better work than a guest verse on a Thomas Rhett album. And then there's mixtapes. Yeah, they're free, and it won't help you get out of your contract, but it will give you and your fans buzz and momentum, proving to Sony that your brand and career is still worth their investment in the long term. And at the very worst, well, you still have your YouTube channel, you release Dirty Love on that channel, you have your brand deals and fashion connections in Hollywood and ways of reaching out to your fans. It won't be the same level of success, I know that, but while the legal nightmare unfolds, it's a way to stay engaged, and you have to stay engaged if you want this to come out in your favor. And hell, all those celebrities who have supported you, have them put their money where their mouth is. I'll give Taylor Swift some credit for giving you $250,000, but you know what? Show up on one of her albums as a songwriter, or maybe work with Demi Lovato, or Lily Allen, or all those other artists who have wanted to support you. Because look, Kesha, at the end of the day, you've shown more strength than should have ever been demanded here for over a decade of abuse. This battle, unfortunately, is far from over, though. And while you might be barred from a conventional path to your art, it's only a matter of time before that changes. And you can avoid convention, if only for the sake of good business. And while it's sick and it's wrong that you've been put through this living hell for so long, right now the world's in your corner. If you're as smart and as driven and as committed as I know you are, you'll stick the landing. We don't just believe in you, Kesha, we believe you. And right now, I want to see that belief realized. Good luck.